She told him she was fine. He believed her. 3 weeks later, she was gone. No warning, no explanation. Just a text that said she needed space, followed by silence that stretched into permanence. He scrolled back through their messages, looking for the sign he missed, looking for the moment everything changed. And there it was, buried in an ordinary Tuesday conversation. She'd said she was fine. He'd said, okay. And in that single exchange, he'd failed a test he didn't know he was taking. This video is about the tests you're failing, the signals you're missing, the entire language of female behavior that operates beneath the words women actually say. I'm not talking about manipulation, I'm talking about translation. Because women communicate in a frequency most men have never learned to hear. And that deafness is costing you relationships, opportunities, and connections you don't even know you've lost. Schopenhauer wrote that the world is my representation. What he meant is that we don't experience reality directly. We experience our interpretation of reality. And interpretation requires understanding the language being spoken. Most men interpret female behavior through male logic. They hear words and take them literally. They see actions and assume direct causation. They apply the communication patterns they know to a communication system that operates by entirely different rules. The result is confusion, frustration, the recurring sense that women are irrational, unpredictable, or playing games. They're not irrational. They're not unpredictable. They're not playing games. They're speaking a language you haven't learned. And today, I'm going to teach it to you. What you're about to discover comes from studying the philosophers who understood human nature at its deepest level. Jung's work on the anima and feminine psychology. Freud's insights into the unconscious communication of desire. Machiavelli's observations on how people reveal their true intentions through indirect signals. Robert Greene's analysis of seduction and power dynamics throughout history. This isn't pick-up advice. This is psychological literacy. The ability to read what's actually being communicated beneath the surface of social interaction. Let me give you the framework first. Female communication operates on 3 simultaneous channels. I call this the triple transmission. Channel 1 is verbal content, the actual words being spoken. This is the channel men typically hear. It's also the reliable channel for understanding actual meaning. Channel 2 is emotional subtext, the feeling beneath the words, what she's actually experiencing versus what she's saying she's experiencing. This channel requires attention to tone, timing, and context. Channel 3 is behavioral truth, what her actions reveal about her actual state. This is the most reliable channel, but also the most ignored, because it often contradicts channels 1 and 2. The man in my opening story heard channel 1. She said she was fine. He processed the verbal content and moved on. He missed channel 2. Her tone was flat. Her response came slower than usual. The emotional subtext was screaming, "I'm not fine, and I need you to see that without me having to say it directly." He missed channel 3. She'd stopped initiating contact 3 days earlier. She'd declined plans twice that week. The behavioral truth was clear. She was withdrawing, testing to see if he'd notice, hoping he'd pursue. He didn't pursue because he heard fine and believed fine. This is why understanding female behavior requires learning to hear all 3 channels simultaneously. And that's exactly what the 9 secrets in this video will teach you. But before I give you the first secret, I need to address something that might be stirring in you right now. You might be thinking, why should women communicate this way? Why can't they just say what they mean? Fair question, wrong frame. Asking why women communicate indirectly is like asking why water flows downhill. You can resist it. You can wish it were different. Or you can understand the physics and work with reality as it exists. Jung understood that certain patterns are archetypal. They exist across cultures and throughout history because they serve deep evolutionary and psychological functions. Female indirect communication isn't a flaw to be corrected. It's a feature to be understood. Women communicate indirectly for reasons that made perfect survival sense for thousands of years. Direct conflict with physically stronger partners was dangerous. Reading emotional states accurately was essential for protecting offspring. Creating plausible deniability in social situations prevented ostracism. These pressures shaped communication patterns that persist today, even when the original dangers have faded. Your job isn't to judge these patterns. Your job is to read them. Because the man who can read what women actually communicate, not just what they say, has an advantage that transforms every interaction. Here's what we'll cover. Secret 1. The testing protocol. Why women test men constantly and what they're actually evaluating. Secret 2. The withdrawal signal. What it means when she pulls back and what most men do wrong in response. Secret 3. The words-behavior gap. How to identify when her actions contradict her statements and what to trust. Secret 4. The emotional bid. How women request connection without asking directly, and why missing these bids destroys relationships. Secret 5. The safety scan. What women are unconsciously evaluating in every interaction with men. Secret 6. The comparison framework. How women assess value and why understanding this changes everything. Secret 7. The investment reveal. How her level of effort tells you exactly where you stand. Secret 8. The future frame. How women communicate long-term interest through subtle present tense signals. Secret 9. The integration truth. The deepest pattern underlying all female behavior and the key to genuine connection. Each secret builds on the last. By the end, you won't just understand female behavior. You'll see it. The patterns will become visible in real time. And that visibility changes everything. Let's begin. The first secret is one most men sense but few understand. Women test constantly. And your response to these tests determines everything that follows. I call this the testing protocol. And it operates on principles that Machiavelli would have recognized immediately. Machiavelli wrote that a prince reveals his true nature not in times of ease, but in moments of pressure. Anyone can appear strong when nothing challenges them. True character emerges only when stress is applied. Women understand this intuitively. They know that men perform, that men project images of confidence, stability, and value that may or may not reflect reality. And the only way to verify reality is to apply pressure and observe the response. This is what testing actually is. Not manipulation, not games, verification. She's checking whether the man you present is the man you actually are. Let me show you what this looks like. Scene 1. Early dating. You've made plans for Friday. Thursday night, she texts. I'm not feeling great. Can we maybe do another day? This is a test. Not of whether you'll accommodate her, of how you'll respond to disruption. The wrong response. Immediate over-accommodation. Oh no, feel better. Whatever works for you. I'm free whenever. This signals desperation, reveals that you have nothing else going on, suggests she's your only option. The right response acknowledges without supplicating. Sorry you're not feeling well. Let me know when you're back to normal. This communicates care without communicating neediness. It accepts her frame without abandoning yours. Scene 2. Established relationship. You're at a party. She sees you talking to another woman. Later, she says, "She seemed really into you." This is a test. She's not asking for information. She already observed the interaction. She's checking your response. The wrong response: excessive reassurance. What? No, it was nothing. You're the only one for me. I barely noticed her. This signals weakness. It suggests that the mere mention of another woman threatens you, which implies that you believe you might lose her interest. The right response is calm acknowledgement. She was friendly. Then you change the subject. This communicates that other women's attention is normal for you, not remarkable enough to require defense. Scene 3. She mentions an ex casually in conversation. This is a test. She's observing whether jealousy destabilizes you, whether your frame depends on erasing her past, whether you're secure enough to acknowledge that she existed before you. The wrong response is visible discomfort. Interrogation about the ex, attempts to diminish him, signals of insecurity. The right response is neutral acknowledgement. No reaction beyond normal conversational engagement. This communicates that her past is information, not threat. Jung wrote about the anima as the feminine archetype within the male psyche. Men with integrated anima don't feel threatened by women's autonomy, history, or connections. Men with unintegrated anima experience female independence as attack. The tests women deploy reveal whether you've done this inner work. Now here's what most men miss. Tests aren't pass-fail in the simple sense. They're calibration. Each test gives her more data about who you actually are. Passing one test doesn't mean you're done. It means you've provided one data point. She'll continue testing because continuous verification is the only way to maintain confidence in her assessment. This might sound exhausting. It isn't. Because once you understand the protocol, passing becomes automatic. The responses that pass tests are simply the responses of a man who is actually secure, actually has options, actually maintains his frame regardless of external pressure. Here's the deeper pattern. Every test evaluates one of three things: value, stability, or investment calibration. Value tests assess whether you're actually high value or just performing it. She'll mention other men, create opportunities for jealousy, observe whether you react from abundance or scarcity. Stability tests assess whether you remain consistent under pressure. She'll create small conflicts, change plans last minute, push against your boundaries. Not to be difficult, but to see if you bend. Investment calibration tests assess whether your investment matches hers or exceeds it. She'll pull back slightly. Observe whether you pursue with equal or greater energy. Too much pursuit signals overinvestment. Too little signals underinterest. She's looking for calibration. Robert Greene wrote about the importance of strategic uncertainty, never appearing fully committed while never appearing fully indifferent. The man who passes tests consistently occupies this middle space. Interested, but not desperate. Invested, but not dependent. Now let me give you the transformation element. A man I worked with was failing every test without knowing it. His girlfriend would express mild dissatisfaction, and he'd immediately scramble to fix it. She'd mention any other man, and his entire energy would shift. She'd pull back slightly, and he'd flood forward with reassurance. Within 6 months, her respect had eroded completely. She left him for someone who, by his assessment, was less accomplished, less attentive, less invested. That man passed tests, not because he was better, because his responses communicated what her testing protocol was designed to verify. He was secure. He had options. He wouldn't collapse if she withdrew. My client failed tests because his responses communicated the opposite. He was insecure. He had no options. He would collapse at any sign of her displeasure. Same woman. Different responses. Completely different outcomes. Here's your practice. The next time a woman in your life does something that creates mild tension, negative emotion, or uncertainty, pause before responding. Ask yourself, is this a test? If so, what is she actually evaluating? Then respond from the frame of a man who has nothing to prove, who has options, who remains stable regardless of her behavior. That response passes. Every time. The second secret explains the most misread signal in female behavior: withdrawal. When a woman pulls back, reduces contact, or creates distance, most men interpret this through their own communication style. They think, if I were pulling back, it would mean I've lost interest. So she must have lost interest. This interpretation is often wrong, and the response it generates usually makes everything worse. I call this the withdrawal signal, and understanding it requires grasping something Freud identified over a century ago. Freud wrote about the repetition compulsion, the tendency to recreate emotional patterns from early life, often unconsciously. Women frequently withdraw not to end connection, but to test its durability, to see if you'll pursue, to verify that your interest isn't conditional on her constant availability. This pattern often traces back to early attachment experiences. The child who learned that love requires chasing. The teenager who discovered that attention comes through absence. These patterns get wired deeply and operate automatically in adult relationships. Here's what withdrawal actually signals in most cases. Possibility. 1. She's testing your interest level. Does he care enough to notice I've pulled back? Will he pursue, or will he match my withdrawal with his own? This test reveals how invested you actually are versus how invested you've appeared to be. Possibility 2. She's creating space for longing. Constant availability prevents desire from building. She's instinctively creating absence so that presence becomes more valuable. This isn't manipulation. It's psychological intuition about how attraction works. Possibility 3. She's overwhelmed and needs processing time. Women often process emotions through withdrawal rather than through immediate discussion. She may need space, not from you specifically, but from the intensity of connection. Possibility 4. She's genuinely losing interest. This is the interpretation men jump to first. It's also the least common actual cause of withdrawal. The critical mistake most men make: matching withdrawal with withdrawal. He notices she's texting less. He decides to text less too. She notices his reduced effort. She interprets this as confirmation that her withdrawal was justified. Both parties now match each other's minimal investment. The relationship dies of mutual starvation, while both believe the other stopped trying first. The correct response depends on reading the type of withdrawal, but in most cases, it involves maintaining your own frame while gently pursuing. Not desperate pursuit, not flooding her with messages asking what's wrong. That communicates anxiety and confirms whatever doubts she had about your stability. Gentle pursuit means maintaining your normal level of contact, perhaps slightly reduced, while clearly communicating that her withdrawal hasn't destabilized you and that you remain interested without being desperate. Let me give you specific language. She's been distant for 3 days. The wrong response: hey, is everything okay? You've seemed distant. Did I do something wrong? This response puts her in the position of managing your anxiety. It communicates that her withdrawal has affected you significantly. Even if it has, showing this rarely helps. The right response: I'm thinking about you. Hope your week is going well. This acknowledges her existence, communicates continued interest, and demands nothing. It's an open door without a push through it. Or better yet, I found this thing that reminded me of something you said. I think you'd find it interesting. Send something relevant. This demonstrates that you're thinking of her while living your life. It provides value rather than requesting reassurance. It gives her something to respond to without pressure. Schopenhauer wrote that we forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. In relationships, men often forfeit their own frame to manage women's emotions. The man who maintains his frame during her withdrawal communicates something powerful. I'm affected by you, but I'm not controlled by you. Now here's the deeper layer. Sometimes withdrawal is genuine disinterest, and here's how you distinguish. Temporary withdrawal maintains warmth when contact does occur. She responds to your messages eventually, and the responses are engaged, if less frequent. The connection remains when active. It's just less active. Terminal withdrawal goes cold in content, not just frequency. When she responds, responses are shorter, flatter, less engaged. The quality of connection has degraded, not just the quantity. If you're facing terminal withdrawal, pursuing makes you appear low value. If you're facing temporary withdrawal, not pursuing makes you appear disinterested. Reading the difference is essential. Jung wrote about projection, how we unconsciously attribute our own contents to others. Men frequently project their own communication style onto women. I would only withdraw if I were done. So she must be done. This projection blinds you to the actual signal being sent. She may be withdrawing precisely because she wants you to pursue, because she needs verification of your interest, because something in her early patterning requires her to test whether love persists through distance. Your job isn't to judge this pattern. Your job is to read it accurately and respond effectively. Here's the transformation story. A client came to me confused. His girlfriend had withdrawn significantly over 2 weeks. Following conventional wisdom, he matched her distance. Things got worse. She became colder. He became more distant. The relationship was circling the drain. I asked him, "Before the withdrawal, was she warm and engaged when you were together?" "Yes," he said. "Very." I told him, "She's not leaving. She's testing. Pursue gently." He sent a voice message. Not about the distance, just sharing something from his day. Warm, light, no pressure. She responded within an hour. The withdrawal ended. She later admitted she'd been waiting to see if he cared enough to reach out. His matched distance had felt like confirmation that he didn't. That's the power of reading withdrawal correctly. The third secret addresses the most confusing aspect of female communication. When words and behavior don't align. She says she wants a nice guy, but dates men who challenge her. She says she values communication, but pulls away when you try to talk about problems. She says she's happy, but her behavior suggests otherwise. I call this the words-behavior gap. And understanding it requires grasping something Machiavelli observed 5 centuries ago. Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be. Few feel what you are. He understood that public statements often serve social function rather than revealing actual truth. People say what they believe they should say, what positions them favorably, what avoids conflict or judgment. This applies directly to how women describe their own preferences. When asked what they want in a man, women typically describe socially acceptable qualities: kindness, humor, intelligence, stability. These are safe answers, answers that present them well, answers that avoid the complexity of actual desire. What women respond to behaviorally is often different. Confidence that borders on arrogance, unpredictability within safe bounds, challenge and resistance rather than constant accommodation. This isn't hypocrisy. It's the gap between conscious preference and unconscious response. Freud built his entire framework around this gap. The conscious mind has beliefs about what it wants. The unconscious mind responds to entirely different stimuli. And behavior is driven by the unconscious far more than the conscious. Here's how to navigate the gap. Rule 1. Trust behavior over words, always. If her words say one thing and her behavior says another, her behavior is the truth. Her words are her presentation. Her behavior is her reality. She says she needs space, but keeps initiating contact. She doesn't need space. She needs you to not need space. She needs to feel like she has the option without actually using it. She says she wants you to open up more, but pulls away when you do. She doesn't want unlimited emotional access. She wants controlled vulnerability at moments of her choosing. Too much openness makes her feel like your therapist, not your partner. She says she wants you to make decisions but criticizes every decision you make. She doesn't want you to stop deciding. She wants you to decide in ways she agrees with, while appearing to generate the decision independently. This sounds impossible. It isn't. It just requires reading her preferences before asserting them as your own. Rule 2. Watch her feet, not her mouth. Where does she actually spend her time and energy? Not where she says her priorities are. Where her behavior reveals they actually are. She says she values quality time, but always has another commitment. Quality time isn't actually her priority. Her other commitments reveal what actually matters. She says she's looking for something serious, but her behavior keeps things perpetually casual. She's not looking for something serious with you. She's maintaining optionality while enjoying the benefits of connection. She says she doesn't care about money but gravitates toward men who have it. Her spoken values and her behavioral responses are misaligned. Trust the behavioral response. Rule 3. The gap often reveals protection, not deception. Women don't usually lie about their preferences to manipulate you. They describe idealized preferences that would protect them from hurt. The nice guy who would never leave. The communicator who would always understand. The stable partner who would never disrupt. But these protective preferences aren't what generates attraction. They're what feels safe to say. What she responds to includes elements of danger, uncertainty, and challenge that would be socially inappropriate to admit. Jung called this the persona, the mask we show the world versus the fuller self that exists beneath. Every person has a gap between stated preferences and actual responses. The gap isn't unique to women. It's just particularly relevant in attraction dynamics. Here's a specific application. She complains that you don't share enough, that you're emotionally closed, that she wants to know what you're feeling. You take this feedback literally. You open up completely. You share your fears, your insecurities, your struggles. You give her full emotional transparency. And something shifts. Not toward you, away. She becomes less attracted, more critical, less respectful. What happened? You listened to her words and ignored the behavioral truth. What she said she wanted and what she actually responds to are different. She wanted more access to you, not unlimited access. Controlled vulnerability that you choose to share, not emotional flooding that makes her your support system. Robert Greene identified this pattern in his study of seduction. Strategic withdrawal creates desire. Tactical mystery maintains interest. Full disclosure, however requested, often kills attraction because it eliminates the unknown. The man who navigates the words-behavior gap doesn't dismiss what women say. He contextualizes it. He understands that stated preferences are aspirational, protective, or socially constructed. He watches behavioral responses to understand actual preferences. Here's your practice. Identify one area where a woman in your life says something that contradicts her behavior. Don't confront her with the contradiction. That puts her on defense and produces nothing useful. Instead, adjust your behavior to match what her behavior reveals, not what her words claim. Then observe. Does she respond better? Does the friction decrease? If so, you've identified the gap, and you've learned something about her actual preferences that her words would never have told you. This is how you stop being confused by female behavior. Not by believing everything you hear, by watching everything she does. The fourth and fifth secrets work together. Miss either one and connection deteriorates. Understand both, and something profound becomes possible. Secret 4 is the emotional bid, and it explains why so many relationships die without anyone understanding why. An emotional bid is a small attempt at connection. It's rarely direct. It's often disguised as ordinary conversation, casual observation, or throwaway comment. She says, "My day was exhausting." That's not a weather report, that's a bid. She's reaching for connection, hoping you'll ask more, show interest, engage with her experience. She says, "Did you see what Lisa posted?" That's not sharing celebrity gossip. That's a bid. She wants to discuss something with you, to have her observations validated, to feel like you care about her inner world. She mentions that your anniversary is coming up. That's not a calendar reminder. That's a bid. She's watching whether you've remembered, whether it matters to you, whether she matters to you. Most men miss these bids completely. They hear the surface content and respond to that alone. "My day was exhausting." Okay. Did you see what Lisa posted? No. Anniversary's next week. Yep. Each missed bid is a small wound, not fatal in isolation, but wounds accumulate. After enough missed bids, she stops making them. And when she stops bidding, the relationship is functionally over, even if it continues, technically. Freud understood that intimacy is built through repeated small moments of connection, not grand gestures. The relationship that survives isn't the one with the most dramatic peaks. It's the one with the most consistent response to everyday bids. Here's how to respond to bids. First, recognize them. Train yourself to hear the bid beneath the words. What is she actually reaching for? Connection, validation, engagement, interest. Second, turn toward rather than away. Turning toward means engaging with the bid, asking follow-up questions, showing genuine interest. Turning away means ignoring, dismissing, or responding only to surface content. She says her day was exhausting. Turning toward, what happened? Tell me about it. Turning away. Okay, that's it. The difference between relationships that thrive and relationships that die is often just this: turning toward bids instead of away from them. Now, let's connect this to Secret 5, the safety scan. In every interaction with men, women are running an unconscious safety evaluation. I call this the safety scan, and it operates continuously, beneath awareness, assessing threat level. This isn't paranoia. It's calibrated response to reality. Women face physical threats that men typically don't. They've learned through experience that certain signals predict danger. The scan runs automatically because the cost of not running it is potentially severe. Here's what the scan evaluates. Physical signals. How does he handle his body? Does he respect physical boundaries? Does his presence feel controlled or threatening? Emotional signals. How does he handle frustration? Does he escalate or de-escalate? Is his anger controlled or volatile? Respect signals. Does he accept no? Does he push past resistance? Does he acknowledge her autonomy or treat it as obstacle? Consistency signals. Does his behavior match his words? Are there incongruities that suggest hidden intentions? The scan doesn't assess whether you're dangerous. It assesses whether you could be dangerous, whether the pattern of your behavior includes warning signs she's learned to recognize. Here's why this matters for connection. A woman cannot fully relax with a man who fails the safety scan. Even if she's attracted to him, even if she enjoys him, some part of her remains vigilant. And vigilance prevents intimacy. The man who passes the safety scan consistently creates space for genuine connection. She can relax into his presence. She can be vulnerable without activating protective patterns. Here's how you pass the scan. Physical calibration. Match intensity to context. In early interaction, maintain comfortable distance. Advance gradually. Read her body language and respect what it communicates. Never corner, crowd, or constrain. Emotional regulation. When frustrated, de-escalate rather than escalate. Show that your anger is controlled, not overwhelming. Demonstrate that strong emotion doesn't make you unpredictable or threatening. Boundary respect. When she says no to anything, accept it cleanly. No negotiation, no pressure, no sulking. Clean acceptance signals that her no has power, that you don't view her boundaries as obstacles. Word-behavior alignment. Do what you say. Be where you said you'd be. Don't create incongruities that trigger her pattern recognition for deception. Marcus Aurelius wrote about being the same in all situations, consistent in public and private. This consistency passes the safety scan because it eliminates the uncertainty that activates vigilance. Now here's how these secrets connect. The woman whose bids are consistently met feels valued. The woman who feels safe feels relaxed. The combination of valued and relaxed is what creates genuine intimacy. Most relationship problems trace back to one of these failures. Either bids are being missed, accumulating wounds that erode connection, or the safety scan is failing somewhere, preventing full relaxation and vulnerability. The man who masters both becomes rare. He responds to her emotional bids with genuine engagement. He passes her safety scan with consistent, calibrated behavior. And the result is a woman who can fully show up in the relationship, who doesn't need to hold back, who can give herself completely. Here's your integration practice. For 1 week, track every bid you receive and how you respond. Turn toward, turned away. Be honest. Simultaneously, assess your own behavior against the safety scan criteria. Is there anywhere you might be failing without realizing it? These two practices reveal more about your relationship patterns than any conversation could. Secrets 6 and 7 are uncomfortable. Most men don't want to hear them. But denying reality doesn't change reality. It just keeps you blind to it. Secret 6 is the comparison framework, and it explains how women assess value, whether we like it or not. Schopenhauer wrote that all human striving is ultimately comparative. We don't experience things absolutely. We experience them relative to alternatives. Happiness isn't objective. It's happiness compared to what else is possible. Women assess men comparatively, not consciously calculating, but continuously updating their sense of your value relative to other options. This sounds cold. It's simply accurate. And understanding it allows you to operate with clear eyes rather than wishful thinking. Here's how the comparison framework operates. Women assess your value against 3 comparison sets. Set 1. Other men currently available to her. Who else is showing interest? What qualities do they offer? How do you compare in the areas that matter to her specifically? Set 2. Men she's had in the past. Previous partners set a baseline. If you significantly exceed that baseline, your value increases. If you fall below it, your value decreases. Set 3. Her idealized possibility. the type of man she believes she could potentially attract. This may or may not be realistic, but it functions as a benchmark nonetheless. Your position in the comparison framework isn't static. It shifts based on your behavior, her options, and her evolving sense of what's possible. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The comparison framework explains why improvement matters, why resting on your current position is dangerous, why you can lose her to someone objectively less accomplished if that person exceeds you in the dimensions she's actually comparing. Robert Greene observed that value is always relative. The prince seems powerful until a more powerful prince arrives. The lover seems desirable until a more desirable option emerges. Holding position requires continuous attention to your comparative standing. Now here's how to work with this rather than against it. First, understand what dimensions she's comparing. Not what you think matters, what actually matters to her. Some women compare primarily on financial stability, others on emotional presence, others on physical attraction, others on social status. Identify which dimensions she weights heavily. Then focus your development there. Generic improvement matters less than improvement in the dimensions she's actually evaluating. Second, maintain slight uncertainty about your options, not through obvious flirtation with others, but through a life that clearly extends beyond her. Activities she's not part of. Social connections she doesn't control. A fullness of existence that suggests you're valuable to others, not just to her. Third, don't become complacent. The comparison framework penalizes those who stop growing, who become comfortable, who assume that past attraction guarantees future attraction. It doesn't. Attraction requires continuous demonstration of value. Now, let's connect this to Secret 7. The investment reveal. Her level of investment tells you exactly where you stand in the comparison framework. I call this the investment reveal because her effort reveals her assessment more accurately than any words could. Here's the principle. Effort follows value perception. People invest in what they value. They withdraw investment from what they don't. If she's investing heavily, initiating contact, making plans, showing up consistently, buying you things, prioritizing you, her comparison framework assessment is favorable. You rank highly against her alternatives. If her investment is declining, she's responding but not initiating. She's available but not eager. She's present but not attentive. Her assessment is shifting. You're losing position in the comparison framework. If investment has collapsed, minimal responses, canceled plans, emotional unavailability, you've fallen below threshold. She's no longer comparing you to her options. She's decided you're not among them. Here's how to read investment accurately. Measure initiation ratio. Over the past 2 weeks, how often did she initiate contact versus how often did you? A rough balance suggests healthy mutual investment. Heavy imbalance, either direction, signals misalignment. Measure effort level. When she does engage, what's the quality? Thoughtful responses. Quick dismissals. Does she remember details from previous conversations? Does she build on shared experiences? Measure priority signals. When scheduling conflicts occur, how often do you win? How often does she protect time with you from competing demands? These metrics are the investment reveal. They tell you where you actually stand, regardless of what her words suggest. Here's the integration. The comparison framework and the investment reveal work together. Her investment reveals her current assessment. The comparison framework explains why that assessment might change. If investment is dropping, the comparison framework has shifted. Either your value has decreased or her alternatives have increased. Either way, the solution isn't to demand more investment. Demands don't change assessment. The solution is to improve your position in the comparison framework. Become more valuable in the dimensions she measures. Create more uncertainty about your own options. Stop any behaviors that have degraded your position. Nietzsche wrote about the will to power as the fundamental drive. In relationships, this manifests as the continuous positioning for value. Not through manipulation, through actual development. Becoming more, not just performing more. Here's your practice. Honestly assess your current position in her comparison framework. Not where you wish you were, where you actually are. Then examine her investment level. What does her effort reveal about her current assessment? If there's a gap between where you want to be and where you are, that gap is your development target. Not to manipulate her perception, to actually improve your position through genuine growth. That's the mature response to these uncomfortable truths. We arrive at the final secrets. These are the deepest. Miss everything else but understand these, and you'll still see more than most men ever will. Secret 8 is the future frame. It explains how women communicate long-term interest through present tense signals. When a woman sees you as a potential long-term partner, her communication changes subtly. She begins referencing you in future contexts. We should go there sometime. You'd love my family. Next summer we could. These future frames aren't just planning. They're reveals. She's mentally placing you in her future, testing how you fit, imagining you there. The presence of future frames indicates serious interest. Their absence indicates categorization as temporary. Here's how to read them. High future framing. Regular references to activities you'll do together, people she wants you to meet, experiences she's planning to share. This signals strong long-term interest. Low future framing. Conversation stays in the present. Plans are immediate or not discussed. No reference to future connection. This signals either early-stage uncertainty or categorization as short-term. Future frame withdrawal. She used to reference the future. Now she doesn't. This is concerning. It suggests her long-term assessment has changed negatively. Jung wrote about projection into the future as a function of the unconscious. When we see someone as part of our future, our unconscious has already made a decision about their value in our life. Future framing reveals this unconscious decision. Here's how to respond. If she's future framing heavily, match it. Reciprocate references to future connection. This confirms mutual trajectory. If she's not future framing, don't force it. Injecting future references into a connection she sees as temporary creates dissonance. Instead, focus on improving your position in the comparison framework until future framing emerges naturally. If future framing has withdrawn, address it indirectly. Don't ask why have you stopped talking about our future. Instead, elevate your value and observe whether framing returns. If it doesn't after genuine improvement, her assessment may have finalized. Now we arrive at Secret 9. The deepest truth. The pattern beneath all patterns. I call this the integration truth, and it explains the fundamental thing women are actually seeking through all the testing, comparing, evaluating, and signaling we've discussed. Women are looking for a man who has integrated his shadows, his masculine and feminine, his strength and vulnerability, his independence and capacity for connection. Jung spent his career mapping this integration process. He called it individuation, the journey toward wholeness, the incorporation of rejected aspects of self into conscious personality. The man who hasn't integrated is partial. He either suppresses his aggression entirely and becomes soft, or he suppresses his vulnerability entirely and becomes brittle. He either loses himself in relationships or can't connect in relationships. He swings between extremes because he hasn't found the center. The integrated man holds opposites. He's strong and tender, independent and connected, confident and humble. He doesn't suppress aspects of himself to appear consistent. He contains contradictions because he's done the inner work. This is what women are ultimately scanning for. Not individual traits, not specific behaviors. Integration, wholeness, a man who has become fully himself. Here's why integration matters. The integrated man doesn't fail tests because he's not trying to pass them. He's simply being who he is, secure, grounded, present. The integrated man reads withdrawal correctly because he's not projecting his fears onto her behavior. He sees clearly because his perception isn't distorted by unexamined needs. The integrated man navigates the words-behavior gap because he's done the same work internally. He's aligned his own words and behavior. He recognizes the gap in others without judgment. The integrated man responds to bids naturally because he's not defended. He can receive connection because he's not afraid of it. The integrated man passes the safety scan effortlessly because integration produces the consistency that signals safety. The integrated man maintains position in the comparison framework because integration itself is rare and valuable. The integrated man's investment is calibrated naturally because he's not operating from desperation or detachment. The integrated man generates future framing because women sense his stability, his depth, his capacity for genuine partnership. Everything traces back to integration. Here's the final truth. You can learn every pattern in this video and still fail. Because learning patterns is not the same as integrating yourself. You can memorize responses to tests and still be the kind of man who fails tests internally. You can track her investment while your own insecurities sabotage the connection. The real work is internal. Becoming, not just learning. Integrating, not just understanding. Robert Greene wrote that the person who knows themselves cannot be manipulated. I'd extend this. The person who has integrated themselves doesn't need to navigate female behavior. They understand it naturally. They respond correctly automatically. Because their inner world is ordered, their outer relationships follow. This is where I leave you. You now have 9 secrets that most men never learn. The testing protocol, the withdrawal signal, the words-behavior gap, the emotional bid, the safety scan, the comparison framework, the investment reveal, the future frame, the integration truth. Each one illuminates female behavior from a different angle. Together, they create a map of the territory. But the map is not the territory. And understanding is not transformation. If you've made it this far, you're different from most viewers who clicked away when content became uncomfortable. That persistence suggests something about you. A willingness to see clearly. A commitment to actual development. The next video goes deeper, into the integration process itself. How to actually do the inner work that makes everything external fall into place. Subscribe, because understanding behavior is the beginning. Becoming the man who generates the right behavior automatically, that's mastery. This is the shadow mind. Stay sharp, stay aware. I'll see you there.